There's one very basic thing. It is all you need to know about, well, okay, Game Grumps is awesome.
Alright, let's try that.
Like you said, let's try that again. Let me just tell you something about quantum entanglement. Motherfucker. The first thing you have to know is that when they're making these quantum entangled particles, they are literally shooting. The experiment that I saw was that they shot a photon at a specific molecule or whatever it was, calcium, I don't care. And it divided so specifically that when you have two different observation towers that read the resulting thing, the one they read on the one side will be seen as spin up, the one they read on the other side will be seen as spin down. And it's not even consistent. So then China goes off and says, "Oh, we've done it also. We can do the exact same thing up in space." Now, the main caveat, obviously, the moment that the the thing that makes it like unfalsifiable nonsense, the moment you read them, they are no longer entangled. You read them, and they have the one is face up, the other one's face down property, which they call one is heads, the other one's tails thing. However, my conclusion, freaking duh. First of all, you can only find, according to even their own words, the experiment that I originally saw that the Nobel Prize was given to for being able to prove quantum entanglement, they could only get it to read as heads up, heads down sometimes. And it was enough that they said, yeah, that's pretty damn close. You might as well say it's right. I'm sorry. First of all, if you have a quantum entangled state, reading it shouldn't change the entangled properties. For example, if you twist a bat, the top half of the bat is going to twist the same amount as the bottom half of the bat, no matter their size and distance from each other, because of the size of the bat. It doesn't make a difference how big you make the bat, whatever else, but just genuinely, like, if there's nothing to stop it, if it's fully rigid, like it's not going to randomly twist like an arm twists, but if the bat is rigid, then it's more like a finger, and the side closest to my hand is going to be the same orientation as the pinky. It doesn't change, right? That's what's happening in quantum entanglement. Only they claim that it happens at far distances also. This is the most nonsense I've ever heard. And again, I just heard music in the hallway. I just heard from Neil deGrasse Tyson another video talking about how there's this whole thing on quantum entanglement was not only proven, but you can also do it from a distance, and for some reason you can't travel information faster than the speed of light. I'm sorry, that's not how this freaking thing works. You can't have it both ways, honey. You either have the ability to flip it back and forth, and it flips the other thing back and forth because they are entangled, or you don't have that property. So you have to ask yourself, what is really to stop it from changing? And the answer is nothing. Also, you don't have to flip the bit from being up and down. You can twist them slowly. We've seen this with magnets, that if you have the magnetic field lines, okay, and we've seen other people be able to control lightning, like literal sparks of electrical energy through the air by using sound to control where that is. If you can control all that easily, you can just take whatever apparatus holding the electron or photon that you're saying is entangled, gently twist it, and on the other side, it should gently twist. This gives you a trillion points of information that you can then dial in and say, oh, if it's dialed to this, you have a word, and you only need so many bits and whatever else to make all the different kinds of twisted personalities that you want, so that you have all those different bits of information. Now, might not even be necessary for entanglement to be possible, but the twisting motion and the idea of twisting slowly in increments of radians that are like, you can go as far into the degrees of like how slowly, shut up, fuck up, how slowly are you moving the twisting dial. You can really do a lot with that and get like trillions of bits of information. But of course, if you really want to have lots of information change and be accurate, you have to be able to twist into position and stay there. And there's a lot of things that happen with twisting mechanics with technology that is only able to like do things so quickly because of all the things that we have explained about how physics and the twisting of something is like, the front end of it doesn't turn as fast as the back end once you get to a certain length of the thing. And like any wire or whatever else, it's kind of like that. But if it's more rigid, yeah, it might take longer, but it will still have the back end twist, and then the front end won't be twisted yet for another bit of time based off the speed of sound or some bullshit. But we're talking about entanglement, and you're able to change determine the information, but apparently once it's been determined, you can't read it again and do another thing because it's a single time only thing. That's called bullshit. Absolute, complete nonsense. There is no such thing as quantum entanglement because you either are connected, you can make the twist and do the transmission of anything. Literally, if you could quantum entangle, okay, if it's real, twist it and use those magnetic field lines stuff to have a perfect, like if it's up and down, those magnetic field lines will line up specifically, like a clock face. So when it goes here, you have this motion information. When you there, that motion information, should correspond to whatever the hell happens on your ship wherever else, if quantum entanglement is real. And then you can simply make all sorts of statements about whatever else thing, and you did it, and it's great, and you now have all sorts of, if it's free flowing and you just make those inputs, then automatically you have like literally the entire language plus another 1,000 more characters that you can transmit as all these different positions. There's no reason you can't do all sorts of things with that. Like, you think about the amount of different types of. This is why analog is such a good technology from the past, with joysticks that are potentiometers that have specific amounts of power associated to them. So when you do this much and that much, it does all of that on the game side, and it's like so cool. Versus other stuff that doesn't do any of that stuff. The point is, if it's possible, it would be maintained. If it actually happens at all, it would be maintained. They are flat out either one, misunderstanding and overhyped, or two, lying. Also, quantum computers don't use quantum entanglement, and if they do, that's a nearby magnetic resonance thing where the positive end of one side flows into the negative end of the other side, like batteries or magnets, which they are. We all know that they are magnets. Little electrons are magnets. The point is that's how they can work at a close level. And again, all that computing and everything, there are a couple of videos that I tried to look up about, and unfortunately, there's so much fake news out there and AI news. Let me show you what I fucking found in this bullshit. In this bullshit, I found something like China's quantum experiment creating bullshit, and the quantum teleportation stuff. It was bullshit. There is no actual information in that. Those are AI videos. They have whatever the hell, and they don't talk about actual quantum entanglement nonsense. They talk about some other thing that has to do with the time crystal, which is just, oh, yeah, because of the orbiting of specific outside electron, you have obviously a processing clock function where it's like, it not only is like, we don't think of orbits as that way, but still the processing and the bumps that happen are persistent enough and consistent enough that you just have this stuff that is constantly changing its chemical um, interactions so that you have stuff like the color changes or whatever. And it's able to be done at room temperature. Yeah, we've all seen chemical changes that can keep switching back and forth at room temperature. I've seen a couple of videos about those, and they're neat. It's not anything to do with quantum entanglement. It's just basic chemistry stuff. Entanglement is a completely different thing. It's about vast distances, still having a connection, and still whatever the hell, and it's nonsense. And I'm tired of it. And we need to stop saying quantum entanglement, because if you can't transmit the thing is, if you can do quantum entanglement, you can transfer information faster than the speed of light. Because apparently, if it doesn't make any difference, and if you make those assertions about whatever thing, the thing is, you're going to have a timestamp of when you looked at the thing, and depending on what part of the timestamp, you have a chance at registering it as being heads up or heads down or whatever else. And it's like, they literally did so many tests, and it did not consistently heads up or heads down at all. It was a distribution of all sorts of states, which violates the entire thing. You can't ever say, Like the only reason why you would think that it doesn't. Okay, the only reason why you could rationalize there being some error is the timestamp delay. Is that if you don't look at the motion of the electron, because it's going at crazy speeds, whatever it's doing, right? Whatever its motion is, its spin or whatever, um, that entire bunch of nonsense is incredibly hard to be precise about without like because literally think about it, if you're doing one of those slow-mo camera jobs, you can only do like billion frames per second for a few fractions of a second, and then you run out of film idea. So there's that type of thing where it's like you have to do all of this in ways that are able to be consistent and whatever else, and to read the states and to be precise about the moments and then say, oh, this and that and whatever else about it. It's all bullshit. Anyone who's worth their salt in the science community, freaking bullshit. You say quantum entanglement is real, you are a fake scientist. You might be real in any other field, but when you're looking at this, you're going in with some kind of weird bias that makes you not actually critically think and use the scientific method. The fact of the matter is, it does not work that there is some entangled thing about it and that it just suddenly is a moment you read it, it also snaps so that there is no other moment in time when you can ever have read it again and whatever. There's no reason that that should ever be the case in the realm of physics. It's just it either has the connection, like a twisting rod, or it doesn't. And who cares? Because literally, you're talking about objects at distant, crazy distances or whatever else. And yeah, of course, you can say that you've made the measurements, you assume the timestamps, your accuracy of how many times it's been up or left. It's like I've said before, quantum entanglement is just you took the baseball, you cut it in half, and you're finding out whether or not the side that has the right side has the right side. Therefore, obviously, the left side is on this ship, and or vice versa. And there's nothing else about it. You're not determining anything. You're just looking at, or in similar, like the rotation and orientation, it's like vortices, where if your flow is up, it will flow this way in this direction, that way, and that, like cogs that are meshing against each other. And you're trying to find out which cog is clockwise or counterclockwise. It's analogous to that, where the motion can be in that way. But again, if you simply twist the plane or turn the direction of the cogs, suddenly they're both oriented the same way, right? And there's no difference between them. So this whole thing about spin up, spin down, whatever, blah 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 blah, orientation in space doesn't anything. So we're oriented in space based off of what? The ground of Earth? And why? And then we're also getting an accurate measurement. This is the most far-fetched, impossible thing that even if you had it correct, it doesn't matter because if you can't repeat it with the same particles, it's not a real connection to begin with. That's the thing. But if you were to, the only way that you can prove that quantum entanglement is real, okay, you have to have some kind of panel array of quantum entangled particles that when you draw on it on one side, that same interaction, reversed or whatever, happens on the other side and is observed. Right? You do that. I mean, all it takes to do that is you need like six. You'd mark four of them in an L shape or whatever can, well, it has to be, for example, it shouldn't be, why not three of them be lit? Well, with four of them lit, you know you have a specific shape. The shape is very unlikely to repeat. And let's say that you did it with two on the bottom and one on the corner. That's kind of an L shape, and it's kind of good enough. But it's invertible. So to get the full information and correctly, if you have the corner, then you have, it's like QR codes. Then you can properly know that that information is that specifically. So if you have, it would, if you get that state on your spaceship or whatever else, then you have an information sending thing. Even if you can only do it once, then wouldn't you just have an elaborate many layer system where you start with one set of particles, make your first motion, and write your first sentence or whatever to the people, and then you take your second layer, another entire group of quantum entangled particles that are mapped with the other person's layer 2, make another picture, make another statement, and then you have your second sentence. Information traveling faster than the speed of light, bada boom. You just need a lot, you just need some of them. But if you can connect them and if they can stay connected, which you can't do because quantum entanglement is bullshit, but if you could do that, just do the twisting action, you have way more information, and therefore you have all the stuff you could ever want. You don't even need multiple particles. At that point, you just need one, and you can constantly change it to the different positions, and then the computer can analyze that and be like, okay, it was here, 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 here. And therefore, you now have an exact picture of the Mona Lisa transmitted by 1 qubit. Okay, 1 e-bit entangled particle bit. Just one. That's all you need is one. But does anyone think about orientation as the means of transferring information? All they think about is heads and tails, like bits of information. I don't understand you guys. You're so limited. So if I'm right, then just do the twisting thing and there you have it. Again, if you had this also, the twisting also applies to the polarized light nonsense with the sugar. And if you twist it one way and whatever else, whatever signal on the other end becomes the light that came on through that side. So depending on how you twist it, you get all these different bits of hue information, right? It's another way of transmitting a lot of information, and if you can rapidly do all, instead of twisting, just change whatever something about it, that there are ways of speeding it up, multiple signal overlap or something, and you can just change for all of those different things and then get tons of information sent really fast, really far, coherent, and whatever, right? Hard to think that you need, like, because, yeah, magnetic field lines, they're polarized. You have a definite flow up, so that's the north, and whatever part that is facing with, or however you do it, it's like twisting the thing. It has a definite orientation, so you can just, if you can manipulate it like a dial, then just manipulate it like a dial, and then you have just loads of information possibilities. Whatever. Analog saves the day. If quantum entanglement is real, it's not. Listen, I'm happy to explore and expand on the mind ideas of, well, what if you had this thing? But I am not tricked into thinking quantum entanglement is real until you actually send messages correct as they can be. Because like just having one or two is not enough. Once you send those words, whatever, you can send words, pictures, video. Like you have enough information, you can easily send video. You have enough quantum entangled particles, you can have giga quantum entangled particles, and all you need is tiny little things holding all those little things, and then they can become like, it's kind of like working with film, that when you have all these entangled particles, you could have like some weird quantum entangled ribbon of cos cosmically entangled film, like old VCR strip nonsense, you know? That stuff. Like you could have straight up VCR technology be able to send, well, video messages into any distance that you want as fast as you want. I don't like it when people say quantum entanglement is real, but you can also not transmit information faster than light. If all those bits of information are there and accurate, you can easily transmit whatever information you want. Like let's say it's like having Hollywood squares. Like what's this, how many bits do you need for, like in Minecraft, they say you need a certain amount of bits for a clock and all of that. But you don't. You can reduce those amount of bits, um, somehow. Like forget about the middle top. Just have, so that removes 2 bits. So you just have like the one that represents whether there's a line on the top. Like you can represent the number 4 with just 4 bits. You don't need more than that. Wait, no. Yeah, number displays only need 7 bits, right? You don't need, like, for example, the corners, the edges of the thing. Who cares? Whether you ever end up doing all of this stuff and whatever else, I'm not gonna get no Nobel Prize about it or whatever else. People won't even recognize that I made these live streams and videos because some people might shut me up or whatever. I don't, or they just might never even notice. But I would love to talk about this stuff to Numberphile or freaking Hank Green, Kyle Hill. Kyle Hill is, there's a bit more just more with Kyle Hill than there is with Hank Green, but Kyle Hill got, listen, everyone can get things wrong. I'm not gonna, I started being bothered about certain people, like the Science Asylum was always on the up and up with me, but then there's this guy, um, Action Labs or something, where it's like, I don't know, the way that he talks or something, the way that he explains some things is like, is there, but then you have a caveat that it's like, no, we're actually using whatever else, and some, there were some things where it's like his logic weren't correct, but it's like I've even seen Bill Nye be able to make all sorts of mistakes. But the point is, I try to think of like who I would actually like. Hank Green is probably the one that I would talk to the most likely because mistakes are few and far between, but they're always, but he's made mistakes, but he's also admitted to making mistakes and whatever else, and everyone does. But like Science Maths Video, Matt Parker, easily, um, freaking any of them, number file people would like to talk to you guys or whatever. Anyone. Matt, Matt Pat. I doubt I would ever talk to Matt Pat. Like, I don't know. The problem that I have with a lot of them, they get over enthusiastic about things to when they end up losing, they end up making certain claims that it's like, wait, hold on. You measure it once, you can't measure it again. It still happens once. You can make an array of this stuff and send information, but then you also state that you can't send information faster than light. And it's like, no, you can't. You just can't. It's dumb. But there's also stuff like they can't figure out how electrons are fast, time dilation doesn't actually work, and these other nuances, these tiny bits of information where it's like I fill in all these gaps, and the application of that information is very limited. But on like everything else that's already been discovered, and to the degree that they should understand all of this, I don't understand how people can ever say quantum entanglement because it's a correlation. There is no entanglement. I understand that some people say, well, there's a bunch of stuff that we don't know, and it's not right to say, it's not right for me to say that I know it for sure because we have no experience with the thing. Listen, I have recently looked at like the actual numbers of speed per second that we're saying just the galaxy has been moving on. And again, if the when I recently talked about PEMDAS and stuff, like there's so much wrong with PEMDAS that it's the most lazy way of doing math. And I can understand that some people might think that it's okay to have certain things and whatever else, but it all depends on what all is happening. Like you could explain um, to me that even though I say 2 plus 2 times 5, and you're like, what is that? What is that going to lead to? 12. Not 20, because it's 4 times 5, but 12, because the multiplication is done first. I'm sorry, but if you think of an object with dimension 2, well, okay, that'd be the, let's say you have 3 plus 1, right? That makes the PEMDAS versus what other people would call, what everyone else calls just regular math or street math. Completely different answers. Anyone in street math would say that 2 plus 2 times 5 is 20, and 1 plus 2 times 5 is 20. But PEMDAS takes those numbers and it says, well, you just multiplied 5 times 2 and 5 times 3 in the other instance, so you have 15 plus 1, so you have 16, and 12 in the other. Can't help but think that both of them are like, because I chose the number 4, I mean, it's Tetris. So you have Tetris pieces, right? And you have multiplied by 5. You have 5 of those pieces. So the total volume of it is 4 and 5. Tall or whatever. So you could have a 4 long or whatever, who cares the orientation, whatever. You end up with 20 bits. PEMDAS is like adding on to the sum of the multiply function, which is like not even how most people, even in the science field, does math, because It's like how recently I talked about this stupid idea of million, billion, trillion. You think of one, two, and three, but there's still the thousands space. So if you want to add million, billion, what do you really have? Well, you have million, which is two sets of three zeros or six, and trillion, or did I say billion? Billion, which is three sets, right? You have to think of the thousand space. So you think of one and two with the naming stuff, but it's actually two and three. Add those together, and then to do the naming convention, you have to subtract one. So you can't, for so you would have to add first, then add, and then subtract. You can't do it in any order because that's just how the system transforms, right? Similar things happen with like um, stuff to do with atomic particles and all that. We're going off topic with entanglement because I got into the weeds of the math nonsense I talked about before in a different video. PEMDAS is stupid. It's not that it's stupid. It's applicable for something, but it's a very specific something, and it's a volumetric or whatever, but it's not actually volumetric depending on the situation. It's like it doesn't matter what order you do these things, and I'm like, it totally freaking matters. Like the difference between 12 and 16. So literally, the reason why I mention it is because when I went into the calculator, I get this answer, which is wrong. Like anyone would be looking at this has to actually, in their mind, they have to say it's this or it's that. That's how the math does it. But I'm saying do this, right? 10 and that times 2. Well, I can't find out the product of the thing times 2 in this. That times 2, I get the real answer. But to do a string, it becomes stupid, worthless, and pointless, and absolutely just a waste of time. It's not. It's kind of neat that there is that PEMDAS trick that's in the calculator that you can use, but I would say there should be a way to shut that shit up. Otherwise, you have to do it manually. I genuinely hate. That's why I call PEMDAS lazy, because you literally, in order to do any other situational math, you have to do it slowly. You have to add all the parts that make up the sum of the bulk, then multiply them by the number of batches of that bulk. Because if you think of how you want to package something, for example, exactly. If you have a bunch of different products, right, they all fit inside of a box. Only those specific number of products fit in that box, and we know the configuration that works. Whatever the situation is, you end up with that. Let's say it's one of those things where you have like tissue box type thing, and you have like one here, and the other one's here to fill in the box. They sell them like that, right? And then multiples of that stack makes up the entire volume of the unit. So they would say 2 plus 1 times 3, you get 6 boxes of tissue in a nice little stack, and that's how they ship it, right? But if you just randomly say that it's just 6 plus 1, so you get 7, instead of 6 times 2, which is 12, well, the difference between, and it conflates into giant numbers. It's like the difference between freaking 120 and just 7 or whatever. It is the difference between the PEMDAS methods and stuff, right? Because you could just say, we have a bunch of individual ones that represent each individual thing. They all fit there specifically. And the way that they fit, nice and all. And then all of that, sum it up, multiply it by 5. So you have 5 layers of that stuff, right? But then if you try to PEMDAS that, you end up with, well, it's just 5 times 1. If you have like 5 ones and then times 5, you end up with 5 times 1, which is 5, plus the other 4 ones, so that's 9, versus the 5 ones equals 5, times 5, you get 25. So the difference between 9 and 25, depending on what order you do the thing, and based off the real world example of you have 5 individual things, and then that in a package, and you have 5 packages of those things, you could understand how you would never say the other way around. Like you never have a thing where you just have a bunch of these things and then you get one, except for, let's say, you the only reason you would do that is like if you like buy 2 get 1 free something. So in every batch of 2, you have to add the extra 1. So 1 plus 1 times 2 PEMDAS, which is actually 2 times 1, get the 1 for free, versus it would have been 4 if you said 1 plus 1, which is 2, times 2. You know, the difference between 3 and 4 is the same number of the same numbers, but one representing multiplying factors. You turn this into you can make this kind of mistake with exponential stuff instead, and that can totally change numbers into an even more vast. Like the difference between 9 and 25 is addition and multiplication. If you go into exponents and stuff, right? Whatever you started as your base, if you got that exponent wrong, then you're going to screw everything up, right? So again, if you have 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then all of that to the power of 3, so you have a cube of it, or that times itself, well, if it just says 1 cubed is just 1, then you just add all the other ones, and you end up with like 10 or something. But if you had the 10 and multiplied that by itself, you have 1,000. And it's the difference between having 10 and 1,000 in the order of the doing of the thing, and PEMDAS would screw you over and say you have 10 when you're supposed to have 1,000. It just gets worse. There's like hexation and whatever the fuck you want to talk about. Right? And levels. I don't want to talk about it. Point is, entanglement doesn't happen. And PEMDAS is minimally applicable. I don't know where all PEMDAS is applicable. It may be PEMDAS is good in computer science, and it does all the math maybe right with computer science. But then if you get a bunch of addition in different order, and then you're forcing PEMDAS with it and not doing the volumetric correctly, the computer is going to spit out something that is nowhere near what is correct and accurate to reality. So then you have to manually program it to instead not do PEMDAS but do street math, and then you'll get a real answer that is applicable because the scenario fits in that situation. It's so messed up. So crazy. Whatever.